Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. We're here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and today it's the Halloween times. The spooky season is, technically we're past it, but not that far past it. Come on. And so we've played Silent Hill 2, but the remake. And the remake is a lot longer than the first version of this game. So we are going to be covering kind of the first half of Silent Hill 2 Remake today. And joining me, as always, to discuss all things video games is one Pete Busby. How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing good. Excited for spooky season, although as you said, we are on the tail end of it. But in honor of both spooky season and the election, I have a very, very spooky election fact for y'all. Brace yourselves. So this is back from 2016, so maybe the math is a little off now, but NPR did the math to find out how low of a percentage the popular vote a candidate could win and still win the election thanks to the Electoral College. And they found out, drum roll please, the answer is 23%.
Oh God.
If the math worked out perfectly such that you won the right states with only one vote,
Oh my God.
like one extra vote, a candidate could win with 23% of the popular vote. Thanks
I
to our
don't think
wonderful
that
Electoral
sounds
College.
like I don't think that sounds quite like democracy. Maybe that's
Nope.
just maybe I'm just uninformed about what that's supposed to run as, but that doesn't seem quite like it. Anyway,
As
hi, I'm Jess
Washington
O'Brien. I'm here
intended.
too.
Welcome, and that other voice, Jess O'Brien. Welcome.
Yellow. I don't have any trivia, but I'm here.
As we have had for several Silent Hills now, we have brought on the internet's foremost Silent Hill expert, Jess VoidBurger O'Brien, to contribute. And this is a new one. This is one where we're all actually fresh on this.
Whoa. This is crazy. I'm so excited. It's real. It's present. It exists. This is wild.
It is, and we'll discuss it when we discuss the game more, but I don't think they fucked it up.
I don't think they fucked it up, guys. I'm like really excited that it seems like they didn't fuck up. Like, what reality is this? What timeline did we look into?
I'm pretty far in, and it hasn't felt fucked up yet. So we'll see. There's still time, but so far so good. Jess, before we do our plugs, do you have any plugs?
I'm Jess. I'm VoidBurger on everything that matters, especially Blue Sky, which is increasingly a thing that matters more than Twitter. And you should just go over to Blue Sky, everybody. But yeah, I'm also on YouTube, and I stream on Twitch. And I'm also the editor, and I play one of the characters in the podcast Skull Tenders, which is a narrative improv comedy horror situation. That runs on Dungeons and Dragons 5e, but it's not nerdy. I swear, it's like cool. It's like a cool version of that. I don't know, but I put lots of sound effects on it, so it sounds less like just boring nerds rolling dice.
Very good plug. Look, if you like D&D, but you're cool.
Yeah, that's
this is the one for you.
Nice.
Most people who like D&D are pretty okay, gotta say.
That's true. But this is the cooler one. Just whatever you were listening to, this is the coolest one. So you should check.
Switch on over to Skull Tenders instead. Yeah.
All right. So our normal plugs. Reminder: you can get in touch with the show at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, which I should just delete.
Go to Blue Sky.
It's in my brain that I should delete this, but it's also I have said that exact sentence so many times that retraining myself. I'll get to it. At Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. That's our email address if you want to write in. You can support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens, which we have either just hit our Patreon goal for playing Mass Effect Andromeda, or we are one patron away from it. I am not sure which one it is, but I believe we have hit the number by the time you're listening to this. So unfortunately, I think after Silent Hill 2, we have to play Mass Effect Andromeda, Pete.
Thank you, fans and listeners.
thanks for supporting the show. And if you wanted to support the show more, reminder, we've got that OG Soncast tier for the 90s and early 2000s anime podcast. That's a Patreon exclusive at that tier. So get in there. Check it out. It's I've listened to it. It's good. Pete, you're on it. What are you
I am.
which show are you watching now?
Guts is my pick.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So I'm not going to do a Discord report this time because Em's not here and she's the person who handles that. So I'll just go straight into Silent Hill 2. Jess, you are the expert. Why don't you explain to listeners if they somehow don't know what Silent Hill 2 is? What is Silent Hill 2?
Yeah.
And what is the game we played?
So, Silent Hill 2, the original, came out in 2001. It was the second, get ready for this, trivia, the second Silent Hill game, hence
Nice.
the 2 at the end there.
Novel of them
But
to go in order.
I know, right? Which is weird because they kind of didn't, because it's not a sequel to Silent Hill 1. So that threw a lot of people for a loop. A lot of people didn't even like Silent Hill 2 when it came out, and then it kind of grew into a really, really big, the most beloved, most cult following of the entire series. And then Konami went and made like 4 okay-ish Silent Hill games. They got up to 4, and then they shipped it on over to America and the West, and some Eastern Europe also, and made 4 really bad ones, and also an arcade shooter, and like 2 other weird things, I think. But the story of Silent Hill 2, the premise rather, I'm not gonna tell you the story, but the premise is a sad man is drawn to Silent Hill, a spooky town, by a letter sent to him by his dead wife. And dead people can't write letters, so there's a big mystery going on. Is his wife, who is dead, not dead, alive, writing letters, luring him to this town for what ends, for what purpose, etc. He runs into some other strange characters along the way as well that also seem to have some unique problems to them. And I think that's the vaguest I can go without spoiling some stuff.
Yes. So James Sunderland, he is a wife guy extraordinaire.
Oh, yeah.
Drives his way into Silent Hill. You've got this letter. You start at a gas station on the outskirts of town and slowly make your way through this dilapidated town. And if you somehow don't know what Silent Hill is, it's in the northeast of the United States.
It's more
vaguely.
officially in this one especially. It's officially in Maine. They did it. They pulled the trigger and said it's in Maine.
Maine.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is in Maine. It is supposed to be kind of a quaint lake town, kind of a tourist spot. And James apparently has been to this town before with his wife Mary. And so he is lured back. I think just like first point here, because we're playing the remake. How did y'all feel about the behind the back camera and the graphical treatment, the controls, like playing it like a normal modern video game instead of a early 2000s? I mean, it's kind of in between a Resident Evil and, a free camera, depending on where you are in the original version. I mean, the original version had tank controls, right?
Mm-hmm. You could toggle them, I think, but yeah, they start with tank controls. And yeah, lots of like fixed camera angles in the original. And I was like worried for the production of this for multiple reasons because I didn't trust Bloober Team as far as I could throw them, for various reasons that I don't need to get into. But one of the concerns was like, well, to modernize this, like this is a janky game, the 2001 version.
Yes.
And one of the, antiquated aspects of it is the fixed camera angles. And a lot of like certain scares and certain intrigue points are very dependent on those fixed camera angles. And it's like they can't really do that in the remake because they're going to have a free moving camera. So I was really like, cautiously concerned about like how are they going to handle that? Is it going to be less scary or interesting? But they've done some really clever workarounds for the things that I thought like, oh, they're just gonna have to skip this because they can't do it without the fixed camera or something. But they've been really like resourceful, honestly, about modernizing this in a way that I think is still respectful and feels correct,
Yeah. Pete, did you find the behind the back camera? Any of that? Does it control well to you? Did you have any issues just playing?
No, I found it generally an improvement. It's weird to me, and I don't know enough about hardware and game design or whatever. That's not my area on this podcast. But it seems weird to me that we've made so many strides in like camera angles over the years. You know what I mean? And maybe it's just because
Mhm.
we had to hide more, and now we don't. But it seems like something we would have figured out sooner.
Yeah, at Silent Hill 2, it was much more about what they were hiding and framing
Yeah.
things in an artful way. Like, I would say Silent Hill 2, like other PS2 games that really use camera angles really well, like God of War, was completely controlled fixed camera at all times to make
Oh
sure that
yeah.
everything you saw was outstanding to look at. They only had so many polygons to work with on a PlayStation 2. So if you were going to make things high fidelity and make sure people saw the good model you made, you kind of had to stack the camera,
Mm.
potentially add fog, and then you probably also needed to
Oh,
make
the
sure the
fuck.
stuff that was off camera didn't exist.
Yeah.
So all those polygons could be on the stuff you saw. Um, I think that it's some of that. It's also a directorial choice, right? Like the Silent Hill 2 was coming off of Silent Hill 1, Resident Evil, like a bunch of PS1 games really had to have fixed cameras or pre-rendered backgrounds because they just didn't have enough polygons to render a good-looking model. So if you came up as a developer developing these fixed camera angles and framings in this way, you just think about developing a game differently than like Bloober Team now, who's made behind the back or first person camera games a lot more than fixed camera games.
Yeah.
Um,
This is also their first foray into having any combat in any of their
yes.
games. Which,
Mm.
regardless of like what developer handled this, if it was any developer that had only made, your quote unquote walking simulators before this point, I would be worried for them. But I think they really did a pretty good job. The combat feels pretty good, like tough but fair. The animations are really, really good, like really meaty. You really feel like you're hitting the hell out of these things. Like the force that's behind your impacts feels gigantic, and it's still got this like bit of a lumberingness to it that still feels like appropriately survival horror. It's not like James
Mhm.
is doing action combat rolls or parries or anything like that. So I feel like they found like a really clever medium area to do this combat stuff in, which is just a fucking miracle because they've never done combat before.
Yeah. James James is definitely working through some stuff when he's, beating the enemies too. Like when they get on the
Oh,
ground, he's really letting loose.
his screams when he's like, yeah, when he's doing the Silent Hill stomp on the creatures is like so good and so appropriate, and it like makes me like him more because that's like an appropriate amount of like fuck this. I'm so adrenaline up. Like
It's just a lot of that. And
like his
I
voice
love
cracks and stuff. I'm like, yes, this is correct. You should be scared and worried about this.
Yes, and I love, to your point, Jess, about him being kind of lumbering. You have a dodge, and you can dodge back, side. It's got some invincibility frames, so it plays kind of like a modern action game in that way. But you don't move that far, and you're kind of staggered for a second after you do it. So James, like, he can move a little bit, but he's definitely not dexterous. Like, you're
Mm,
not circle strafing around people, around enemies that well. You're making one
yeah.
dodge and then swinging, one dodge, then swing, swing. And most of his swings, I mean, he hits hard, but he also really commits. So
Yeah.
once you hit the swing button, James is gonna wander into whatever the hell the enemy is doing. So I think one of the big changes in the remake, as opposed to the original game, is enemies when you corner them or hit them consecutive times, 2 or 3 times, they will sometimes just ignore the next hit and not take stagger, and they'll just hit you. Like the bound figures are the straight jacket looking
Uh
guys, right?
yeah, the patient demons slash lying figures, yeah.
Yeah,
They have two names, I don't know why. They're called lying figures when they're on the ground. I don't know why.
the patient demons, for example, like they're the first enemy you run into. They're in some ways one of the more iconic enemies in Silent Hill. If you run up on them, at first, you hit them once or twice, they will just get staggered, and it looks like you can just keep wailing on them. But they will sometimes just tank a hit and headbutt you, or tank a hit and spray goo in your face
Mm,
at point blank range. So if you overcommit, you're probably taking hits, and you'll be exchanging blows instead of walking away unscathed. Which
mhm.
that in the early game, as someone who is used to original Silent Hill 2, where if you just ran up on these things and got them or avoided them, you were probably not taking any damage. Here,
Yeah,
it's
they
pretty
were
easy.
They're pretty easy to deal with. It was a more video gamey video game, whereas I feel like we have come very far in combat AI to a point where you can like program a far more robust set of reactions to stimulus now. Like
Mhm.
if somebody's just wailing away, the game recognizes that as like, oh, okay, you're getting lazy. I need to do something to keep you on your toes. I'm going to grab the pipe and push you away from me that you're trying to wail on me with. Or like they all behave differently when they're in a small space versus being out and about, like where there's a lot of maneuverable room to deal with
Mhm.
them. And like I did not expect that. And I was like, oh holy shit, they do something totally different if they are backed into a corner. That's fucking cool. Well done.
Yeah, for sure. And it led me in the early game to really be strapped for healing items because I was not used to not, getting stopped or having my
Mm,
pattern broken by enemies. So I would just end up exchanging 2 or 3 blows with a decent number of enemies, not realizing, okay, I need to be more patient. I need to
mm.
to circle strafe a little more. Okay, the gun is not just for emergencies.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
There's definitely a
pull,
strategy that this game is trying to teach you with the AI behavior of the enemies.
and they're very reactive. Pete, have you noticed any of the reactions from where you shoot enemies?
Yeah. I mean, there is. I've noticed more stagger, I think, but that could be me not recalling correctly from the first or second time I've played the second one.
I mean, the original game there was no. I mean, there was stagger, but there was no like, okay, I shot it in the leg or I
Yeah,
shot it in
Yeah.
the head.
situational damage like that. Yeah.
Yeah, in this game, if you shoot most enemies in the knees, they will go down on one knee, and you can then just take them out pretty easily. Um, the
They also
original
have
game,
stealth kills.
they're stealth kills. Which, if you come up behind an enemy, you'll just whack them in the back of the head, and they'll fall down on their face. Um, which is, it's just a level of depth that the original game just never had,
Mm.
um, which was really cool. Another thing I really want to call out is the sound design.
Oh
Who's
my
playing
god.
with headphones?
Yep. Yep.
I am. Pete, did you
I'm
play with
like,
headphones?
I'm
No.
staggered.
No, I
Oh,
Okay.
get too scared.
oh, you gotta try a little because you go up to like any fence and it sounds like the most real. Like if you don't even think about these sounds in real life, but if you go up to a real ass fence in real life, you can like hear the wind slightly rattling the fence. You can hear like little ambient noises go echoing through the metal of a fence, and like to put that in a video game is like a level of audio detail that I never expected they would even go for. But it's like every single goddamn small space you can wedge yourself into has like distinct noises going on in it in the background. It's wild.
Yeah, am I using the phrase, is it diegetic sound? Is that when sound is in the world coming emanating from a specific place in a game world?
Yes, yeah. It's
Yes.
usually used when referring to music.
Okay. Yeah,
Like
so like
diegetic music means it's happening in the world and the characters can hear it.
okay. Well, the sound is in this game is really good. Like I first played without headphones. I was playing just on a screen with speakers. Um, as soon as I put on nice headphones and played, the amount of work and horror that is coming out of hearing something skittering in the room, but
Hmm.
not knowing where it's from, and hearing that it might be from my left, but I don't see it. Whatever it is, I know it's to my left, but I can't see it. Is it behind a wall? Is it behind a door? Is it above me? Is it below me? Like I I'm not in danger in this game in most cases because I have enough healing items, bullets, and syringes to just like tank through, right? James isn't going to
Mm.
die. But I am still freaked the fuck out because I just hear shit all the time, all around me. Most of the time, it's stuff I can't kill. It's like a gurgling sound. Oh, I guess it's a bubbling bathtub and not an enemy. But the gurgling sounds like an enemy a lot of the time. So you sound
Mm.
surrounded a lot.
Yeah, I'm really like glad that Bloober team realized the importance of sound design with this because I feel like I don't know, it's an overlooked aspect of horror sometimes is not just usage of noises but usage of silence because
Mhm.
sometimes all the sound cuts out and then you know you're really in for something fucked up. Uh which is
100%.
absolutely thrilling. Like the couple of times they've done it in this game, I'm like, oh shit, what's gonna happen?
They use the radio well. Like the rules of Silent Hill are if you hear crackling on your radio, an enemy's around. And there's sometimes there isn't. The radio goes off and there's nothing in the room with you. And you're just scared because you think there's an enemy around hiding somewhere, and sometimes it just isn't.
A lot
Um,
of times it's those tiny little bugs too.
It's
yeah.
it's usually the creepers, yeah, I think, because they're just hard to find. So they're setting
Mhm.
off your radio fairly often and make you think there's like a way worse enemy in here somewhere. And they also subvert that a couple different times too, where it's like, oh shit, there's an enemy in here. Oh, it's just one of these stupid little bugs, and you kill it and you relax. And guess who's around a corner? A mannequin, because they don't set off your radio until they move.
Yeah. And that's awesome. Like using
Oh,
the sound that way, there's the sound design is really good. I cannot emphasize enough that this is a game to be played probably in the dark with headphones if you want maximum effect. And I've been playing, that's how I've been playing it almost the entire time. And it's really worked. Even when the game, like for gameplay reasons, I shouldn't be afraid. Like I've got a million bullets and healing items, but just the ambiance alone will do it, I found.
I'm like a
Um,
little, like, not all the way sad that I'm streaming this game. Like, my first playthrough is all on stream, but there is a part of me that's just like, oh, I wish, like, I could delete, like, my memory of this game and play it over in a dark room with headphones, not with on a camera with a bright light in my face, because, like, there is something that changes your reactions to things, you know?
yeah, I definitely think it's worth a replay off camera just to see how
Mm,
different it feels.
yeah.
Because when I'm playing alone in the dark with the headphones on, I'm taking breaks like every 20 minutes or so because it's just too tense. Like
Well, I
I'm
was
hitting
thinking of the
pause.
2008 one, and I was like, what are you talking about?
No,
The one that takes place in Central Park, and it's just the worst game.
oh yeah, I have not played that Alone in the Dark yet. One
Oh my
day I'm sure
god.
we'll have to.
Pro pro play, man. It's so bad.
Um, yeah, so I mean, that's kind of the gameplay's been restructured. The camera angles have been restructured. One of the other things I feel like we should call out for folks who haven't checked it out yet is the world is bigger. Period. Like there's
Mm-mm.
more places to go. There's more stuff to see. Jess, I'm sure you noticed it more than even me or Pete did, having just played the original game once or twice. How many more locations? Like, there's a lot of locations that you can just go into now on the
Yeah,
street.
I'm fucking a little too excited about it because like I've heard people like criticize, like one of the criticisms I've heard about the remake is like that it's like a little bloated how much you get to run around town and how many places you can go into, and it kind of distracts from like the thrust of the momentum of the plot. But meanwhile, I'm over here being like, oh my God, I can jump through this window and I can look in this little bookstore. Oh my God, like I'm freaking out. Like, oh my God, I can go into like this diner and inside the Happy Burger and all this shit. So I'm like a kid in a candy store. So I'm like the wrong person to ask whether or not this is paced correctly, because I'm just like, you know, a glutton for this exact thing, because like I've been wanting to see the insides of these places for nigh on 20 years almost, right? So I'm the wrong person to ask.
Yeah, but it is definitely something that, I mean, one, it's opt-in, right? You can just go where James draws on the map
For the
for
most
you
part,
to go
yeah.
most of the time. So you don't have to explore all these places. But one of the big mechanical changes is James can break glass in this game. If there's
Oh,
a
Yes.
if there's a window and there's something behind that window, break that glass and take it. Or they use the kind of
mm,
signposting that a lot of modern games do, where there's a colored object near the things that are interactable. In this case, it's white kind of gauze or cloth. If you see white cloth around something, you can probably break it and climb it, or move something so that you can
and you know,
climb.
good job, like good job choosing the correct look over here gamer color for this. Like I was very relieved it wasn't yellow, you know.
Yeah, it's not yellow
And it's like
paint.
something white and clean. Yeah, something that's white and clean does stand out because everything's so damn grimy, but it's not like so bizarre that it's like, wow, this is some video game ass video game shit.
Yeah, for sure. And so, like, it's interesting. The cars that are broken down on the street, sometimes they have items in them. They're kind of treasure chests. sometimes, like breaking open cars. There's buildings that I was ignoring because I remembered, okay, these are the handful of buildings that matter in Silent Hill 2. And then I saw one with the white gauze around it, and I was like, wait, can I just go into that building? Okay, I need to now try all the doors, right? Or try all the windows. Whereas before, you could ignore like 90% of the town. And just run past it. Like all of a sudden, I'm paying attention to the apartments that you're walking by, or like the row houses that you're walking by. I'm paying attention to some of the different diners and restaurants, and it gives you a reason beyond just, hey, remember that game from 23 years ago, right?
Yeah. I
To go
also feel
and
like
check
they
out.
in like, expanding the town in this way, I feel like Bloober Team also did a clever thing with regards to like it's hard to, I think, in the original games, it's hard to imagine this town was a tourist destination. It doesn't feel like there's much to do there or anything appealing about the place. Like, oh, there's a lake. Wahoo, crazy, let's go to the place that has a lake. Like that's not like a much pull, you know. And I feel like they've done like a better job having like, you know, these restaurants look like good restaurants. These diners are charming. Like people clearly lived here in the resort town and stuff like that. We have the historical society actually feels like a little museum now instead of just like, just some place that's in between this place and that place like in the original. So I feel like they did a pretty good job like filling in these blanks in such a way that it's like this makes a lot more sense that it would be like this. The town would be like this.
Yeah, having the main street actually be quaint.
Yeah, that's
In
cute.
some ways, it's definitely cute. You definitely get a sense that this is a functional town and not just a haunted set. And even like how they've expanded I mean, I think there's about as many rooms in some of the spooky locations you enter, but just the extra detail to the spaces, like pictures, notes that they've put around, makes them feel like more functional buildings and not just
Yeah,
horror zones.
they make more sense layout wise. Like you look back on the like the hospital
Hmm.
Brookhaven, and like the original game, the way they funneled you through that level was very video gamey. And it was very like, you go here, you do that. You go here, you do that. Oh, this puzzle is all the way over there. Don't forget about it. You gotta come back here when you have 4 different keys for it. And like they've done a lot of real clever. I keep using the word clever. I keep coming back to the word clever because they did a good fucking clever job here, fixing these things that I didn't realize were fucking jank because I was so used to it. But like they've realigned these levels in such a way that they flow more naturally. Events
Hmm.
happen in sequences that make a little more sense for them to happen in that order. They've relocated certain iconic puzzles. They've slightly changed these iconic puzzles in certain ways where it's like, oh, this is like the hub. It's easier to get to this puzzle now because you're going to easily come back to this area. Like that is video gamey, but it's also like, I don't know, it's less
It plays
video
better.
game obtuse style because
It just
like
plays
it
better.
plays better. It's natural.
Yeah, like
I also can't
go ahead.
remember if the map was as helpful in the earlier version, because this map is super helpful.
They did a good job with these maps. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's very clear what James is writing down and what he's referencing. Whereas like in the original, it'll just be like a circle, and it's like I don't remember what's in that room, dude. Like, but he'll like write down clock or something like I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
He writes down the puzzle
but there's a lot of
names in spaces where they are. He also
mhm.
writes down hints. Like if you find the solution to a puzzle, he will probably write it on the map somewhere so that you don't have to keep going back into your
Mhm.
inventory to find the 5 digits or whatever you needed for the puzzle. Um, just less backtracking necessary. Like, if a book gave you an
Quality of
answer,
life.
yeah, you don't have to run back to that book if you forgot one of the digits. You don't have to write it down physically because the world's best husband is writing down all the best directions in his map so that he doesn't get lost. But yeah,
I like the way they've changed some of the puzzle solutions too to
mhm.
make more sense. And there's something to be said for like the dreamlike logic of the original. But it's like at a certain point, it's like, okay, I remember when I played this game for the first time, I thought that's fucking unfair. That's bullshit. Okay. Because there's stuff like in Brookhaven, the hospital, you do all this shit to get this fucking box open. You do 4 different things to get this box open, different keys, different codes. You open the box and James says, there's nothing. And then he's like, wait, actually, there's some hairs in here. Doo-dunk. You pick up some random human hairs and you have to combine that with a bent pin you find. And that is what you use to fish a key out. I don't know how healthy your hair is, but mine would not be able to do any of that. That's like ridiculous. That's absurd. And why would he MacGyver that solution? Like, that's a wild ass thing to do. But like for the longest time, like fans kind of reverse engineered that to make sense because like, oh, it's like a, it's in his psyche, it's symbolic and stuff like that. But it's like at a certain point, it's like, it would make more sense. You are in a hospital. Why wouldn't you just use some fucking rubber tubing?
Yeah.
It's got to be everywhere. It's a hospital,
Yeah,
So
I
I'm
mean,
sure there's some people that are like mad about that, but I'm just like, no, that's hinged. The other thing was unhinged that we had to do that. That was some video game, adventure game, ye old Sierra ass bullshit. That's ridiculous.
100%. And having clear delineations of what can be combined and what can't. Also, like if you go into a combined menu, in your menu, it will say, okay, this plus this, and if an item you have can't be combined with another item, it's not going to show up in the menu. Cool. I don't have to figure out, just like try a bunch of things,
Yeah.
hoping that it'll work.
There was a big like key ringing problem in the previous version of this game where it's like, I don't know what the fuck this is for, and you're just rubbing things on other stuff, and it's like that's not really like you're not really playing the game if you're doing that, right? You're just like desperate.
Just get a horseshoe and wax, and then you'll combine them together with fire, and it'll work.
Oh, I'm so curious how they're gonna change that one. I'm not up to that puzzle yet. If they redid that or if they took that out, they probably just redid it to make slightly more sense. I bet.
I'm not going to spoil it. But yeah, and another thing kind of on the gameplay front, there's a lot of locked doors that when you get around behind them, you can unlock them.
Oh yeah.
That it contributes to that sense of flow you were talking about earlier, Jess. Like there's a lot more rooms that are open, and then they will allow you to get into another room that was adjacent that was locked, and then you can come out the front. So it creates this nice circular flow where it's not just you go into a room and then you back out. Sometimes you go in, you go into an adjacent room, you go into another adjacent room, and then you unlock a door that's at the end of it that was locked before. And so it feels much more like you're exploring,
Yeah,
instead of just saying,
it creates these really good shortcuts so you're not
Yes.
backtracking as long as you expect to, because you're like, oh, I'm all the way over here now. This can take forever to go back to the thing. Oh, there's a door here. Oh, it like feeds me directly out pretty much where I need to be. Thank you, Bloober team.
Yeah.
For not making me walk all the way around.
And it's just a lot of quality of life stuff. And I think it works for creating it lets you see more spaces and have more opportunities to be spooked, and more spaces for you to rummage around through drawers, and to be, have a mannequin jump out at you. So they managed to do all of this stuff, expand the space, expand the setting, I think in a way that really feels good to play, while still being scary. They used a lot of modern game design, and I don't think they harmed the overall goals of the game, which is hard, right? Like a lot of the modern Silent Hill games, when I say modern, I mean the ones that have been made more recently, they just go so hard onto combat, or
They're trying so hard to be relevant, and it's sad every time.
Yeah, like Homecoming was just a shooter. Like they made the combat too efficacious. They gave you too many bullets. It wasn't scary.
It was so poorly balanced too, because your combat roll was just so many iframes. You could just roll all the way through that game and be so safe. And like the second knife you ever get is like the best weapon in the game. You're never going to use a pipe ever again because the combo for it is too damn good. And it's like it's so wild to like see Bloober team, who has never done any combat before, do a better job than all these other ones that like tried to quote unquote modernize the combat.
Yeah, And it's refreshing to see the right lessons picked. Like there's restraint here. They are still trying to make you be scared. They are keeping with the core enemies. They are keeping with the core locations. They are keeping with the core puzzle gameplay too. Like the puzzles have been modernized. They make more sense, but they are not. Like they've been modernized, but it's still a Silent Hill puzzle at the end of the day. You know, you're finding two items to combine. Maybe you're writing down a combo lock. There's some weird poetry that's going to tell you what the answer is, and it's a little obtuse. But it's more solvable 9 times out of 10.
I also like that. I also feel like a lot of the puzzles are the way they've redesigned them and recontextualized them feel relevant to the plot in a more like natural way than they previously did, whereas they just felt like here's a puzzle because it's a video game. Like we need a puzzle here. Like one that really comes to mind is the jukebox puzzle when you're farting around Silent Hill for the first time, about to go to. Was this between
apartments.
when you were about to go to the apartments or after
Yeah.
the apartments? I think it was we were about to go. But
go.
there's this, pretty long like puzzle where you have to go to different parts of town and collect these things to fix this jukebox. And when you do fix the jukebox, it plays a very important song that old heads know means something kind of a big deal. And James has a flashback moment where he remembers something about Mary and like one of the special places that she might be talking about, and it gives him a motivational and incentive to go to the next place that you do go to. Whereas in the previous game, you just kind of get fed out into this area. You kind of know that Rosewater Park is important, and after the apartments, you just kind of get pooped near that general direction. But this feels a lot more intentional. Like he remembered this about her, and they actually took that line that like, oh, we spent the whole day there, just the two of us staring out of the water. They took that out from the intro of the game. The I got a letter, the name on the envelope said Mary speech, where he's out at looking over the lake at the very start. So they like edited that out and put it later so it would give him an incentive to go to this place that makes way more sense to do. I was like, yo, that's smart.
Yeah. And even to your point about the jukebox puzzle, like the way that the puzzle unfolds is it's a person broke a record in the jukebox and they took it to the record store to get it fixed. Half of the broken record is in one store, half of it's in another store. There's like a button you need to find. And it kind of tells the story of a person who was Silent Hill stuff. You know, they were losing their cool. They broke this thing in a public place. People were scared. They were worried about him. And they're like, someone should check on his apartment. And wouldn't you know it, like all the pieces are in the places that this person under distress ran to. And so you kind of have a little narrative inside of the puzzle beyond just, hey, find these random items and combine them, which sometimes is how it worked in Silent Hill 2, the original. It didn't necessarily use the puzzle to tell a little minor horror story, you know?
And it also like ties in with like, the way that people were talking about this guy. It sounded like he had a drinking problem. And it seems like this version of Silent Hill 2 is nudging a bit harder at James's drinking problem, which did exist in Silent Hill 2, the original, but it was very, very back burner. There was like a single comment he made about him having a bit of an alcohol problem that everyone on Earth can miss because it's not in an important place or anything like that. And I don't mind them making that a little more in the forefront.
It was good. I mean, they definitely made the change in one scene we'll probably get to later on, but they go to an adult club, a strip joint.
Heaven's Night.
Yeah.
There's another really good reference for the old heads at Heaven's Night and this is like sincerely just for the freaks like me that were around on the internet in the early aughts talking about this on the Silent Hill forums and stuff. But there was one of those rumors, like, Mew is underneath the truck, like those kind of rumors that were all over like the early internet being adorable. Like my uncle said you can do this crazy thing and it makes you your chance of
I'll
catching
put you in
Pokemon
handcuffs.
is better. But like this was one of those things where there was a rumor that there was something you could do to get Maria to pole dance for you when you're at Heaven's Night. And when the cutscene starts, it looks like she's going to do a pole dance for James. And she's like, what? Like, I'm not gonna dance for you. Like, so they do like a really cute nudge to that really obscure rumor from 20 fucking years ago, and I'm like, okay, wow, they know their shit to reference this. Wow.
Yeah, I think kind of one other thing that we should probably discuss at least a little bit before we like walk through the plot, and I think it's kind of one of the first things I noticed is the voice acting and the delivery and the
Mm.
direction of James, Maria, Angela, Eddie, like all the characters you run into. It still has that dreamlike quality, like two people kind of talking past each other in a lot of ways. Um, but it feels a lot more intentional instead of it being maybe the voice director in Japan was directing some people who he didn't quite know how to direct
So
from the
here's the
original game.
story.
Mhm.
Here's the story because I interviewed these people. But the voice director is Jeremy Blaustein, also famous for Metal Gear Solid 1. So he's no slouch. He knows how to direct people. MGS1 had like pretty fucking good voice acting, especially for what was it, 1998, 99 or something. But so here he's working on a horror game, and that's fine and good. But the thing is that so you have some pretty good actors in here. You've got Monica Taylor Horgan playing Mary and Maria. You have Donna Burke, who's playing Angela, and she is a voice actress in other things. And then it's like, who's James? And this sad sack of a dude named Guy Seehee comes in to have his daughter audition for Laura. And she does not get the part of Laura. But Jeremy Blaustein looked at this guy and was just like, he seems really bummed out. He's kind of got the right vibe, actually. What if we just hired this guy to be James? And everybody's like, oh, sure. They didn't know he was like a really bad actor, though. They struggled to get the performance that they did out of Guy Seehee, which I think did lend to the unique, strange Twin Peaksy in places like performances. Because James is a very strange acting man. But I think if you were to have him act this strange in a modern day game, it would be too obvious that there's something wrong with this guy.
Yeah. Can I
He's
ask
not
too?
masking it.
Did anyone else think they made, and I think this is an improvement, by the way, let me preface that. Did anyone else think they made James significantly less horny than the last one, or am I misremembering exactly how horny he was?
No, they made him a little more respectful, yeah.
Okay.
For sure. They also made Maria less overtly horny. But he definitely, this is a different take on how James relates to Maria. He seems more appropriately unnerved by the fact that he is
Yeah.
talking to his dead wife's doppelganger, who's like a little hotter than his wife. Like he's appropriately unnerved by that, but still kind of attracted to her and does not want to be weird about it. Like he's got more of a conflict with that.
Mhm.
And, the performance in the original is just like, you know, bizarre in a different direction. Where
Yes.
it's like, this guy should not be behaving this way, right? Like,
Yeah, so I mean, I just love the scenes with him and Angela now. Like
oh
James,
yeah.
James, like, I mean, Angela's a trauma survivor, and he frequently steps on the rake of like breaking her boundaries and her being upset about it, or like her reading intention into him that he's not trying to put out. And there's a lot more scenes of multiple people in the scene are traumatized in different ways, and they are stepping on each other's triggers without realizing it. And
Yeah.
and they are upset, and they are talking past each other, and they can't relate to one another in some way, fundamental way. And I think it comes across in the scenes.
Yeah.
Um,
It's very well acted.
very well, yeah. And the scenes aren't long. Like it's not like there's a ton of cutscene to this game, but when they're used, I think there's just a higher quality to the acting, and I mean the fidelity of the models themselves, right? Like they can do more than a PS2 could to emote, and I think that it comes across.
I'm like, I'm really excited, which is a weird word to use, but I'm really excited for a later scene,
Mhm.
the famous burning staircase scene with
Yeah.
Angela confronting James and basically calling him out and saying like, you don't care about me. You care about yourself and how bad you feel because I'm around you. Like you only care about assuaging your bad feelings that you have looking at me suffering. You don't care about my suffering. And I'm really excited to see how that plays out, especially because they're doing this version of James that's a little more like well-meaning, but really fucking up. Like there is more of a well-meaning air to it, but she's still right. Like he
Mhm.
doesn't care about her, like and he's doing all the wrong things. He's like trying to like touch her to console her, which is something I fucking hate when people do to me when I'm really upset. Like, don't hug me, don't fucking touch me. I'm mad at you or I'm upset. Uh, and it's like guys do that to women and they don't even realize that that is a stupid fucking thing to do to somebody. So
Yeah,
like James is an asshole and doesn't even realize he's being an asshole, whereas he seems like more of just a dumb, clueless asshole in the original. Like, for example, he also like when he meets up with Laura in Brookhaven,
Mhm.
and she's like, he's like, "How do you know Mary?" And she's like, "You're not gonna get mad at me, are you?" And he's like, "No." And she's like, "I was friends with Mary at the hospital." He's like, "You liar!" Like he gets
Yeah.
mad at her immediately, and like that's acted so much better in this version, where it doesn't seem like he's like the world's biggest fucking dickhead for promising he wasn't about to yell. He just accidentally was a dick and yelled and didn't even realize he was going to do that. Like, there's something really interesting going on here that's a lot more subtle.
Yeah, when that scene happens, I was like, James promised to this child that he wouldn't yell at her and then couldn't control himself. Well,
Mhm.
now, that sure is an interesting thing to learn about this character who we don't know that much
Yeah.
about, right? There's clearly a level of anger here that, I mean, you see it in the combat a lot. There's something going on under the surface here that his muted deliveries in a lot of these scenes is belying, and I think that it's great. Like there's a lot of
Mm.
texture to those scenes as a result.
He
Um,
feels more like he's pretending to be a better person than he
yes,
is. Whereas
100%.
the original performance, I don't think I see he had the acting chops to pull that off. So he just kind of came off as like a little fucking unhinged and a little fucking crazy the whole time.
In this one, it feels like he's someone he knows how he should act, and he is
Yeah, yeah.
trying to do it 90% of the time. But the second there's a stimuli he's not ready for, he just
Mm.
snaps in one way or another. Like
Mhm.
Angela not responding to him the way he thinks, he can't handle it. Laura doing something he doesn't want, he can't handle it. If he's in complete control and the situation is playing out the way he expects, he can be removed. I mean, he's not empathetic. He doesn't come across as
Mm.
someone who's actually looking to help other people, but he can at least come across as someone who's in control of their emotions and what they're saying. But yeah,
Another example is when and this was a cutscene I did not super like the change they made on, but that's neither here nor there. But when Maria like reunites with him in the hospital, after you part ways from her at the very start, she like comes out of the darkness and she's like, "Oh, James," and he's like, "Mary," and he's like, "Oh, sorry. Uh, anyway, I'm glad you're okay." And she's like, "Anyway? What the fuck do you mean anyway? I almost died back there." And like I like how Maria is acted
mhm.
better in the original because she's fucking furious at James for saying anyway, and there's an appropriate like beat of her processing like, did he just fucking say anyway to me? And I like James's performance better in this version though, because he really looks like super excited. Was that Mary? Oh my god, can I leave? Like
Mhm.
but yeah, like he you know does not know, like he kind of approximately knows the way to act but doesn't know how to keep that mask up.
Yeah, 100%. So beginning of the game, you run into Angela at the cemetery. That cutscene plays out. You get into Silent Hill. You get your first weapon. It's the plank with nails in it. You run around. You get that expanded sense of exploration that's going on in the early part of town. You can go into places you couldn't before. I think one of the other big moments is I think it's when you exit after you've solved the record puzzle. Um, the weather changes.
Oh, yeah,
Pete,
that was wild.
Were you shook by when it got windy?
Yes, very much so. Like it was finally nice to have something other than just, well, in addition to, I guess, incredible fog. But yeah, I was like, this isn't how Silent Hill operates. There's not weather.
It felt really like motivational weather. Like, get the
Yes.
fuck out of here. Go to the next place. You're done with that thing. You're allowed to just beeline to the place you're supposed to. Like, it was really good permission to like light a fire under my ass to not fuck around anymore and go to the next place. Like, it was some
100%.
good psychological handling of me, I think.
And what they do, it's not. It gets windy, and like you can see trees moving. The fog gets denser, so your line of sight gets even more restricted. And they spawn a bunch of enemies. Like you are getting chased by 2 to 3 enemies at a time when this is happening, and it just becomes infeasible to fight them all in a way that it isn't for a lot of the previous moments. And I just love that they've gone this far, right? Like you said, Pete, Silent Hill doesn't have weather. Like this isn't a thing
Hey, tell
in
that to
previous games.
Downpour.
Yeah, anyone, if anyone can find Downpour to tell him, we're sorry. Please go ahead. But this happens multiple times in the game. Like they use that to drive you. They use the fog and the wind to drive you out of Silent Hill and into these interior. It also gives you a reason why why is he running into these apartments? Because it's horrifying outside. It's better to be in these scary ass apartments than whatever the hell was going on outside.
Yeah. It really instills a sense of urgency after you've been, for lack of a better word, kind of farting around, taking your time doing this puzzle. Like, nothing too crazy happening, nothing too scary happening. So it was really good, like, sudden urgency.
Yeah, 100%. The apartments play out, I think, pretty similarly to the original game, but there's more apartments you can enter. One thing I really liked with the apartments was the apartments that seem to pertain to James in some way seem actually livable in a way that many of the other apartments don't. Like a lot of them look very dilapidated, everything's rusty, everything's falling apart. But you go to a few apartments that seem like maybe they might be relevant to James or to the story, or they'll have a puzzle in it or something like that. The story relevant apartments, the lights work, little things like that. That make them feel more real, whereas the other places seem more haunted. I appreciated that.
Yeah, like I like that a lot in theory, but I feel like it was a bit of a misstep cutscene direction wise when it came to encountering Pyramid Head for the first time for real. I just think that scene was too well lit.
That's fair.
Like I feel like that apartment could have been the exact same apartment layout and stuff like that. I feel like the scare of running into Pyramid Head there in the original is a more effective, startling situation because the way they do it in the original is you just open a door and there isn't even like a load screen. Basically, they preloaded this cutscene to play immediately, and you're walking in on what looks like a sexual assault or something like that. You're like, what am I looking at? Oh my god! And it's immediately very, very startling because you didn't expect this to be happening whatsoever. There was no load screen. I'm not ready for this. But this one is a lot more like it's slower. You enter this apartment, you find a little thingy, and Pyramid Head spawns nearby, basically. Like he wasn't there a second ago, which can be effective, but I don't think it was like great there because I like that Pyramid Head has a physicality to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. He shouldn't be like teleporting sort of in that sort of video game ass way. And they kind of toned down the sexual assault tones of it.
Yeah, they did. I did notice that in my notes about like James being less overtly problematically horny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like it's very like a common read of that scene that it's like this is like a sexual assault sort of situation that it's supposed to evoke that without it literally being something that's happening. And like the developers have said like, oh no, it's not supposed to be like that's not what's happening there. And it's like, man, are you sure?
I mean, I don't know.
How did you accidentally make this look like this?
I don't know, dog. It's a
How'd
dude.
you do that?
It's a dude with a giant dick for a head, like writhing against 2 enemies that are nothing but female lower halves. Like what?
And like taking both of the ankles in both of his hands and spreading them up and out. It's like there's no fucking way you didn't know this looked like sex, guys. Like you are just lying to us, I think, at this point. Like, or you're very strangely pure. I don't think so, because Masahiro Ito draws the most fucked up porn you've ever seen in your life, by the way. Don't look it up. But they like and so there's been like this like, the fandom has kind of just accepted that this looks like a sexual assault. It fits very well with the themes going on in the game.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a bit of a death of the author thing for us in the fandom. Just be like, it's better as a sexual assault. It makes more sense symbolically.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bummer to see them like pull back from that
A
in
little
a big
bit.
way.
Yeah. I don't remember. In the original game, does James shoot Pyramid Head, or does he just hide through the whole thing and he's not found?
He does shoot Pyramid Head. Pyramid Head does flinch a whole bunch, definitely reacts to it, gets mad at the door, and then decides not to do anything about it. In this new version, he shoots Pyramid Head a couple times and it just ricochets off him, and he's just a real big tough guy and is not fazed by it, and then decides not to attack James in the closet. And I understand why they changed that, because if you shoot at him during the boss fight you have later, it does make the timer run out faster, but it's a timed fight. You're just kind of wasting your ammo. You should just run away from this guy because he's like invincible. And I understand that if you were to, there were probably a lot of players of the original game that saw this guy flinch a whole bunch when he got shot and thought, oh, okay, I can shoot him with gun, just like a regular boss fight, and everything will work out and be fine. So I can see that that's why they changed that aspect of the scene, but I am not the hugest fan of that because I feel like it makes Pyramid Head's decision not to kill James more interesting if getting shot seemed to affect him, because he has every right to defend himself then, right? Like,
I guess.
why
The
did
monster.
he not?
It is weirder. I did find it unsettling that the monster is unfazed by your gunshots and is like, you actually don't even matter enough to kill. I don't even care about you enough to waste my time. Yeah. Side note, whenever I pull my gun out, I get the Jennifer Lopez hit "Let's Get Loud" stuck in my head. It
Why?
really negatively impacts my experience. I don't know why.
Does J-Lo
Yeah.
ever do that?
No, I
It's
just
like user error.
that's on me. But I'm just like, I guess
That's
it's
a
time to
skill
get.
issue right
Let's
there.
get loud. Take the gun out. But yeah, like that scene works. It still works.
Speaking of things that oops, I don't want this to happen, is because I have so much muscle memory from the original Silent Hill 2, I keep pressing the goddamn triangle button,
Oh yeah,
thinking it's gonna open my goddamn map.
and it
And
doesn't.
boy do I take a big sippy of a health drink when I do that.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't talk about I love what happens with the menu when you take damage. It gets
Yeah,
redder.
they fixed that UI in a way that I did not know that UI was not very good until they did a better job, and I was like, oh shit, that's nice.
So after the apartments, this is, I guess, another thing to call out is this game does not change to like Silent Hill movie otherworld transitions, really.
Yeah.
You still like walk through a portal and then you're in the other world when you wake up on the other side. It doesn't do the like slowly peeling, decaying in front of you thing, at least not so far that I've played.
There's a lot in the modern Silent Hills of passing out and waking up. Like a lot of times during some of these games, Silent Hill Origins, that guy's passing out and waking up all the time. Homecoming, passing out, waking up, and it's like, oh, I'm in this fucked up version. Oh no. It's like, and it was cooler that it was not delineated by unconsciousness. It was just a normal, like, subtle transition. So thank you for continuing to do that, Blooper Team.
Yeah, and I like that you step through a door and now all of a sudden it's the rusty nightmare world. The enemies get noticeably different in the nightmare world too. Especially the patient demons, they become much more aggressive, much faster.
The AI is totally different. Like, not totally, you can still hit them and wail on them and stuff like that, but like the way they behave in different scenarios is different. They're more difficult to deal with. They
tend to have
seem
more health.
A lot more aggro in general.
Yeah, they move faster.
Which does happen in the games.
But I think that
But because the games have very limited AI, it's
Yes.
not. It's just like, oh, here's the grosser looking ones. Like they don't really behave noticeably very different.
yeah, in this one they do have different moves. They will do different things, and I appreciated that a lot. Um, I felt like the apartments might have gone on a little too long. Ray, I mean, this game is just long. It's longer in general. Like
Mm.
every spot is longer. I think maybe I was just very my nerves were fried by the end of the second round of apartments. They do a good job of you enter a space and there's a bunch of dead enemies, and it's like, oh no, these these are still enemy character models. They're gonna get up later. I don't like this, and I can't kill them because they're already dead. Oh boy, and yeah, they
I
do that
find
to
that a
you.
little. I find that a little rude in a video game where there's like a guy on the ground. He's clearly pretending, and like you go and shoot him, and he doesn't move, and I'm just like, oh, I'm watching your ass. And then like on the way back through that hallway, he'll be alive, and it's just like that is not fair. I deserve to kill that man because I was being cautious. That's rude, in my opinion.
hmm Yeah, and they do that a lot in the back half of the apartments. Um,
Mm,
when you escape the apartments, you're back in Silent Hill again. You go to, I believe, Rosewater Park at this
yep.
point. You meet Maria. She guides you to. She starts guiding you to a hotel. I think was where she wants to take you for. Oh no, she's trying to take you to some sort of lover's point, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's different than in the original. In the
Um,
original, she does imply like, "Oh, the hotel. I bet that was your special place." Ugh. And like James gets like pissed off at her a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
in this one, she's like, we need to go through the hotel to get, or this motel to get to this other park in town. You get an option here at this point where you can choose whether to go beeline through the motel. You can't, all of the puzzles you need to solve in the motel are in the motel, so you can just beeline through it. You can also go down Nathan Avenue with Maria if you want, and it's kind of like dusky for a lot of this section. Like there's sunset lighting happening.
mm, it's
Um,
gorgeous. Yeah.
yeah, which is really cool to see. Um, and at this point, I assume Jess, you went down Nathan Avenue?
Yep. I
Uh,
need to know if that dead guy was there.
yeah, oh yeah, we didn't even talk about the dead guys. You keep finding dead guys.
Mm.
Like for people who've played Silent Hill 2, the original, like finding dead guys is a part of it. Um, I don't remember in the original game, did all the dead guys look like James?
Yep. 100%, all of them.
Oh, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, it's because you didn't have a camera that you were able to control very well, so it was hard to tell, and they were, mutilated. Like their heads are very mutilated, but they're wearing James's clothes. Like I think all of them.
Yeah.
So that was always a fun thing that was going on, and especially very, very notably in the apartments when you run to that corpse that's like quote unquote watching TV.
Mhm.
And it like wasn't like that a few minutes ago. You come back to that apartment and there's a fresh dead guy watching a staticky television. Foreshadowing, but super famously, that one is dressed as James and just has his head like exposed. But because of the fixed camera angle, you can't, check out, is this James's model? And you have to like do a cam hack, and like, yeah, it literally is James's model, just kind of grimed up. So I like that they're still doing that. I like that they're hiding. They had to hide that guy's head in the remake because you can just swing your camera around and be like, "Who's this?"
Yeah, I appreciated it. They mess up the heads just enough and cover the outfits in enough blood and grime that it can still be a little bit hard to tell that it's James over and over and over again. But I definitely, the further in you go and the more of those corpses you see, the more clear it is that it's just James over and over. Um, so if you go down Nathan Avenue, does Maria have reactions to like the bowling alley and the other places?
Well, in the original, she like does not. She's not chatty the way she is in this one.
I know.
Which is like your mileage may vary on how like too chatty that is, how annoying that is, how Aloy that is at a certain point, where
It's
it's like constantly reminding you of what you're supposed to be doing.
yeah. The only
Um,
part that reminded me was when she had to comment every time I broke a window. I was like, I'm gonna
yeah,
be breaking a lot of windows
it's
here.
like,
Like you're gonna have to get
girl,
used to it.
girl, this is me. You have to accept me for me right now. I'm gonna break these windows constantly.
Do you want me
But
to shoot these things or not?
yeah, right. I'll scare you worse. I'll use bullets if you want, and break these windows. But yeah, also I'm protecting you. Like, shut up. I need ammo. Um, but yeah, she doesn't comment in this way, and that's largely, I imagine, because like it being like 2001, escort quests are not as sophisticated as they are in the modern era, so she didn't have a bunch of programming to comment on a ton of stuff. It wasn't super common to do that anyway, I think.
I
Or
didn't
correct me?
actually. I didn't make it all the way down Nathan Avenue in the remake because I triggered an ambush that caused enemies to spawn in. And at that
Ah.
point, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the motel. I don't think there's
Mm.
anything I need to do down Nathan Avenue. But I was just wondering if you actually made it to the bowling alley with Maria. Does she say something about the bowling alley in the remake? Because she was gone by the time I got into the bowling alley.
Oh, what happened there? Because in the original, she doesn't go in there because she's like, I hate bowling. And it's like, okay, I'm not here to play, and she just stays outside. And the reason for that was so that she doesn't run into Eddie and Laura, because then the jig is up regarding a big thing about Maria and her nature. And they moved that to later because they added a movie theater, and that's where Eddie and Laura are actually hanging out. She doesn't go into the movie theater because then it'd be a whole weird, awkward situation there. But yeah, what did she do at the bowling alley? I thought she was there with me in the bowling alley. I don't remember.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if they did because they did do bespoke scenes in other places where Maria will react to stuff that you're up against. But yeah, once the ambush happened, I was like, no, thank you to any of this. I'm going to go into the
There was a
motel.
dead guy at the end of Nathan though, and I
Okay,
was like,
yeah,
yay, the dead guy's here.
found the dead guy when I went through
Or like a
later
note
on.
from him or something. Yeah.
Yeah, when you have to go to through Nathan to get to the historical society, I went through that time, but I didn't do it
Mm.
the first time through. And yeah, there's just so many ambushes on Nathan Avenue that I, I kind of felt good about avoiding them early and coming
I
back
was
when I
a
had more
little
ammo.
I was a little sad that they didn't do this famous thing, which I wonder if it only happens at night and you don't go up Nathan Avenue at night in this one, maybe? Is that
You
right?
do because the historical
Do
society's at
you?
the end of it.
Is that during night?
Yeah,
Probably.
you
I
will
don't know.
you will do that.
But there used to be this obscure scare where there would be mannequins getting flung out into the road. Like one or two different mannequins while you're walking down Nathan will just get yeeted out in like a big arc, like a 6 foot tall arc into the road in front of you, and it's like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck? And then you have to fight a mannequin out of nowhere, which
I'm
is
not going to
silly.
spoil. I won't spoil. Um,
I'm past that part on Nathan Avenue though. Where are they gonna yeet this mannequin at me from?
so there were some mannequins that spawned when I got to the dead body at the end of Nathan Avenue.
Mm.
I didn't see them yeet in, but
Did they get yeeted though? I'm talking about the yeet.
I couldn't see the yeet. I just suddenly saw two mannequins on a street where there were no mannequins previously. So
Mhm.
someone must have yeeted them.
Pyramid head. No.
Yes.
Just chucking them everywhere.
So you go through the motel. You have a kind of cute moment where you find Maria's outfit from the first game in a closet, and she's
Mhm.
like, "Do you like this outfit? What if I wore this outfit? Would that be cool?" And it's like, I see what you're doing here.
I forget James's response. It was very no comment. It was very like, I don't want to entertain this.
Yeah, it was very. I have no sexual desires as a man. I please don't
I'm
ask me
supposed
this.
to I'm supposed to be a wife, guys. Stop it.
I'm too much of a wife guy to comment on this. Excuse me. Um,
Also, we've neglected to mention that there's a lot of little nods for the old heads, because every single thing they've significantly changed, you can go to where it originally happened and get like
yes.
a little weird flashback like reward for
Oh,
going
nice.
there. And one of them, I don't know if this was one of them or if this was just in the motel and was a reference, but in the room that Heather and Douglas stay in Silent Hill 3, there is a big ol' Halo of the Sun sigil on the wall underneath the wallpaper.
Mhm.
And I was like, what? This guy doesn't show up in this game, this particular sigil. Um, But that was fun, and like what a nice little like nudge for the Silent Hill heads to acknowledge like, yeah, that's that room. Cool, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, they do a lot of stuff like that. And the camera cuts to the static camera angles that were in the original game or to like puzzles from the original game. That I think that's super cool when they do it.
I love them. I'm like looking forward to them now because I was like, oh, I bet they changed this. Where's the little thing that I get to look at? So it does the little like there's like a little dopamine hit every time I get one of them.
Mhm. And from this point, you go to the theater. You go to the special place that Maria mentions, and it's about this woman who was put out in the middle of the lake, and I fell in love with her. She was banished, and he rode out onto the lake every night and tried to bring her food so that she wouldn't die in the middle of the lake. Till one day he didn't make it, and then they both ended up dying. And she's like, "Ah, it's a story about true love." And then you end up in the movie theater. Maria somehow teleports around the movie theater, I guess, and meets you at the front after you've gone through and run into Eddie. I Pete, how did you feel about Eddie eating ice cream?
Eddie, Eddie's got a tough run on this one. I mean, James isn't super nice to Eddie. I think he's trying, like we said, he's trying, but he can't quite manage it. And then Eddie's just sort of, honestly, I thought it was popcorn because it's a movie theater and he's eating it with his hands at first, and it's not. And Eddie's living tough.
He's just dipping his hand into like an empty vat of ice cream and licking the residue off of his hand.
I know why they're doing this though. I'm really excited.
But
Like
why do you think they're doing it?
so in the original it's pizza and we
Mhm.
have a silly scene where James is like, this town is full of monsters. How can you just sit here and eat pizza? He's like really mean to him. He's nicer to Eddie in this by a lot, actually. Like he's judgy, but he's not like fucking mean to him the way that he's mean to him in the original. Um, but the way he's nice to him in this is kind of like he's scared of him a little. So he's being nice to him in like the way you're nice to like an animal that's kind of acting weird, like you're nervous around. Um, but they they gave him ice cream so that his breath you could see
Mhm.
because you keep having these diegetic reasons why you can see Eddie's breath as if it's cold around Eddie.
Oh, okay.
And I know where that's headed, and
Yes.
they keep finding cool little diegetic ways to give Eddie this like frosty breath, and I'm like, this is an interesting tie-in to the stuff that happens later with Eddie. I'm really intrigued where they're going and how they're doing this.
Yeah, I also really like the James asking Angela to come with him, but Eddie vomiting in the like when you run into him in the apartments, and then when you run into him again, you can keep talking to Eddie after you're supposed to go off and find Laura.
Mhm.
And he'll be like, "Hey, James, you should go find Laura," and you can keep talking to him, and he's eventually like, "Oh, what? Now you want me to come with you? Like
Yeah.
now you think that I should join? Okay, jerk."
Yeah,
And it's like,
totally appropriate.
it's like, oh, weird. James feels really comfortable when he's okay with having a woman around him, but a man he's not comfortable with for some reason, and doesn't go out of his way.
It's because he's a dick. It's because James is a dick. Like he offers Angela in both versions of the game. He offers like Angela, like we should stick around. Like this place is dangerous. You were right. And Angela's just like, no, I just slow you down. I don't know. And she's making up an excuse. She doesn't want to be around him
Yes.
because she's scared of men and she's scared of him. So she's making up an excuse not to be around him. And he offers again like later, I think,
Mhm.
not in the original, but in this one. And she's like, no, like, and yeah, he does not like offer to stick with Eddie that I remember when you first find him puking. And he never like offers to team up with Eddie. He just doesn't feel a need to like chivalrously protect Eddie, because he's a man, he can handle himself, whatever. And it just there's a lot better reasons for these characters to not hang out with James in
Yes.
this version.
Yeah, James is very much not cool with any of them. Like he yells at Laura. Like Laura is being a little jerk of a kid, but she's being a little jerk of a kid to a person who's not a cool adult.
No, yeah.
Does not have her best interests at heart, pretty clearly. And she's reading him well. Like I find myself sympathizing with Laura the most. Like she
Yeah.
has a good read on most of these people. She knows not to trust any of them in a way that she just seemed like a little snotty kid in the original game in some ways.
Yeah. And like
Um,
James is very self-interested, and in the original it kind of feels like, well, of course he's the protagonist, man.
yes.
It's a video game. Protagonists are very like they have a goal, they're doing the goal. That's why we're here. Protagonist man is hero. And that's why like the twist at the end of it's like maybe he not good guy. That's why that was so shocking because it's like the year 2001. What do you mean the protagonist is an anti-hero? We haven't invented those yet hardly. Um so like him being like self-interested in a way that's like more subtle but still pretty obvious if you're kind of like if you're willing to see him as like what if he's not the greatest guy? You can like see through him very easily. You know to look for that. Like again, this is just very well acted and
Yes.
well written.
And it comes across and it doesn't come across in a Twin Peaksy, did they mean it or not sort of way, like it did in the original game. And I think maybe, when we do the part 2 of this, I want to ask, like, is James one of the worst people you are forced to play as in video games? Like, in a realistically bad way, It's not like, oh, I need to control Darth Vader for a little while, or, this larger than life figure. Like James is recognizably a bad guy. He's a bad guy who you might actually imagine existing in the world in a way that most anti-heroes that they give you are like superpowered freaks in one way or another.
Yeah, like campy villains,
Exactly. But James is just like he's a bad guy who has done bad things and would probably go to jail for them at least.
I think a similar comparison might be Joel from The Last of Us.
Sure. But I think
I think like because The Last of Us happened, I think people are a little more primed for an anti-hero type person who's like this is a guy who thinks he's a good guy, but he's very self-interested actually.
I think that the main difference for me is just that like Joel, this situation's extraordinary, right? It's like an apocalyptic setting. James is ostensibly in the real world, in a fairly normal world, and what we are eventually going to find out he's done is a thing that I could imagine someone doing without, like, if they did it in a normal society, we would judge them very harshly. It's not for survival. It's not for, like, he's pushed to a limit for sure, to a certain extent, but it is not a limit that other people have not been to and come away not doing what he did. Yeah, we'll go over it when we have the full extent of it. But that was one thing that was just going through my mind. Seeing these reworked cutscenes and seeing how he behaves was like, I feel icky controlling James in a way that I didn't the first time I played this game, the original version. So you get to Brookhaven Hospital. It's sunset, which is actually pretty, I think.
Beautiful. Oh my God.
Sunset coming through the windows of Brookhaven on the first floor. The lighting is immaculate.
It almost feels like this is a place for healing.
It feels
not
safe.
Scary at the it's almost nice.
It feels safe. You are safe for a while until Maria suddenly starts not feeling so good, and she waits for you on the second floor. She needs to lie down. The sun goes down.
Still makes no sense to me, by the way. Like, you're in a haunted, abandoned hospital. Like,
Well,
don't nap.
You start feeling icky. You want to lay the hell down. I don't know.
maybe
It's
it's
the
foreshadowing.
nastiest mattress ever.
It is, but maybe Pete, it's foreshadowing. Perhaps it could be foreshadowing.
Also,
it could be.
I will point out this scene makes a lot more sense in the remake than it does in the original.
Yes.
In the original, it's very first of all, it's not like hard programmed in when this happens. It's just like, oh, one of the first places you go is the second story hallway or whatever it is. And as soon as you enter that hallway, we have a cutscene where Maria's like, oof, I don't feel great, I'm gonna lay down. And she like excuses herself to just, recover. And she also like says it's just a hangover. Meanwhile, she's like, it's like, yeah, famously hangovers cause you to cough. And she's like taking pills and stuff like that. So it's pretty like on the nose stuff right there. And it only happens when you enter that room in the original. So you can have Maria with you for quite a while as long as you're avoiding that particular room. And that's difficult for getting certain endings purposes. It's actually a little hard to get the Maria ending in the original game. And I've noticed that there's a lot more things put into this version of the game that are tells for like, oh, you might end up, drifting to the Maria ending in a more natural way instead of like trying to get it, which is what you kind of had to do in the original.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely
But
get that.
yeah.
And there's a lot more reactivity when you go back and visit her too. Like there's
Mm.
things that you can do. You can talk to her multiple times. There's a
I
cutscene you get.
like that when you leave her in that room, and it's part of the mandatory cutscene that happens. They have an exchange that is optional to do in the original, and it's one of my favorite like whoa chills sort of exchanges in Silent Hill 1. And it's Maria asking James like, so when you find, what if you can't find Mary, what will you do? And James like waits a beat and is just like, I haven't thought about that. And it's like, whoa, the hell, oh, that's weird. What's that about? And that's completely optional to hear in the original. I'm glad they just put it in the cutscene that you get to see
Hmm.
for sure in this. That's a really good decision. Thank you.
Yeah, and the hospital, it's big. The lighting, as soon as Maria's gone, it stops being dusk and starts being night.
It's not as big as the original. My God, they had so many rooms for this small town. There's so many people in the damn hospital in Silent Hill.
Well, it's a insane asylum and hospital, and
Yeah.
dual function. It's tough. Um, and it starts raining too, so you get the sound of rain. Are either of you playing with a PS5 controller, like a more modern controller?
Yes, I am.
No.
Okay. Do you get the dynamic rumble on your controller? You're playing PC version, right, Jess?
Yeah. I
You get
don't.
Do you
I
get the
don't.
dynamic rumble?
I don't remember. I haven't been paying attention to that actually. Are you
Okay.
saying there's dynamic rumble for
Rain.
like the rain hitting the glass of
Yeah.
the window panes or something?
Yeah,
Hey,
like
that's sick.
as the rain is happening, there is dynamic rumble in each hand, like in each palm. It's like a
Ooh.
subtle little rumble as the raindrops hit. Um, so like there'll be some dynamic rumble when enemies are around. Sometimes if stuff happens around, there's dynamic rumble. But the rain, just being in a space where it's raining, my controller was constantly just tiny little vibrations, and
Nice.
it was really off-putting when there were enemies and rain at the same time because I felt surrounded in a way that I haven't played a game that used dynamic rumble this much and this effectively. So like I felt surrounded in my headphones and weirdly my hands. I could feel like there was something around, and it was rain, so I wasn't actually in danger, but it was just a stimulus I wasn't used to getting from a horror game and actually
I
being
gotta pay
taken
more
advantage of.
attention to that.
Yeah, so it was really cool. They also do a good job with the PS5 controller of having sound come out of the controller itself.
Oh, I turn that shit off all the time. I hate that.
Okay, I've appreciated it a few times, like sirens coming out of the controller or like the
It's also because I'm
whispers.
streaming and I
Yeah.
don't want it to get caught on the mic, so that's also a factor there. So that's
100%. But it's cool. It's also cool that they use the lights on the controller to delineate James's health, so you know how
that is
damaged you are.
handy. Mhm.
Um, and,
Have you
and
guys taken any measures to change the user interface?
Yes.
That's just like the HUD stuff. I turned all that shit off on the HUD.
I turned off the raspberry jam around the edges of the screen. It was too distracting. Pete, did you turn off any of the UI stuff?
No, I was just like, we're gonna let this ride. They put in the stuff they wanted. I'm gonna see if I like it, and I'll just complain about it at the end if I don't, instead of doing anything about it.
Just like an adult.
Yeah.
Um,
I turned all that stuff off. I wanted the original experience, unmarred by any mini maps or ammo counts or jelly on the screen, etc.
Pete, what did you make of like each of the main puzzle in the original version of the hospital and kind of the second version of the hospital is these three patients that are being
Yeah,
treated. Did you
I
make
do
anything
think.
of that?
Yeah, I do think this is one of the more interesting puzzles in Silent Hill, just because like you have a story to uncover as you just unlock things. I will say, like, while these puzzles are an improvement from the previous one, as somebody who isn't like lost in the Silent Hill sauce, I still find them nearly incomprehensible. That like, oh, what do I have to dig into this like weird cabinet in this one single room to find this thing that leads to this other thing and then a third thing? Like it's better now, but I'm still not happy about it.
That's fair.
That just sounds like puzzles. You're just describing what puzzles are.
Yeah. I mean, video
Yeah.
game puzzles, most definitely. Yeah.
Don't bring this guy to an escape room. You would hate that shit.
Why don't they just open the door?
God, just let me out. Why am I paying for this?
Why am I not just passing a charisma check? I will convince this man to open the door.
You're one of the guys that
Exactly.
would pull the fire alarm and be like, "Well, I escaped. What do you want?"
But yeah, I mean, I love, the setup of there's these 3 patients. Why can't I cure them? And then you have to kind of go to the areas that were relevant to them. Like this person did aquatic therapy, so you have to go to the pool. This person was put in isolation. You have to go to the isolation wing. And there's little kind of strings of puzzles for each of them instead of just kind of stumbling across a solution. I liked there were distinct feels to different parts of the hospital too. And then you eventually find those puzzles, and then you go to the otherworld version of Brookhaven. In the original game, does Pyramid Head shove you into the otherworld as well from the roof?
Yeah.
Okay.
Except slightly differently. And they did it in a real cute way that I appreciated. Because, yeah, the original, you go up to the roof, you read that sad diary, probably, and you go to investigate the only other thing that's really up there, which is, I believe, like either a shed or an elevator that you're like, oh, sick. Now that I have access to this, I can probably make it to this other place. And you click the door, and it's like, this is jammed. And you're like, ugh, great. So you start you have like a less than a second to kind of process that, because while that subtitle's still on the screen, you hear Pyramid Head's knife drag on the floor very, very close to you, and then like a cutscene immediately happens where he flings you off the roof through a fence all the way down into the solitary confinement patient ward, like the padded rooms area, basically. And in this one, they didn't do that. They had it all kind of like cordoned off because there was like construction going on in that area, and that's where the little Easter egg for the old heads is at. And I was like, okay, they're probably gonna still throw me off this roof somehow. So you go slightly elsewhere on this roof, do something else, and then as you are leaving, you like leave through a door, and Pyramid Head is right there ready to choke you. And I was like, haha, yay. There he is, the boy.
Yep, and he power bombs you through the floor, basically. You wake up, you're in Otherworld. They kept the very locked box from the original game that I liked, but in this version, like there's this box with 3 locks on it, similar to how you had to find 3 bracelets in the regular hospital. Now you have to find 3 solutions for this box, and there's chains coming off of the box. What was that?
Used to be 4 in the original.
Okay.
There used to be 4 keys you had to use for that thing. They took one out. They took out the purple bull key, which you can find another one of those little old head flashbacks. Be like, hint, we're not doing it like this.
I love that
What are you gonna do?
like the chains that come off the box actually lead you into the areas where the puzzle solutions are, which is cool.
Yeah, and they did that for the apartments too. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, do it again. That's a good idea.
Yep. One goes up, two go down, 2 different wings. It's going to be, you get a key from one area, you get some combos from other areas. There's the woman, the wall woman again.
The lady of the door.
Yes, the lady of the door. You have to get her rings again. The elevator. Pete, did you remember the elevator quiz?
I did. I had to look up the answers though. I didn't remember the answers, but I do remember.
I
there
got them
being a
all
quiz.
right, baby. Haha. They
Nice.
changed them. They changed all the questions.
They did. I was like, oh, this is the one where the answer is
Yeah.
Walter Sullivan. And they're like, psych, it's which kid did he kill?
Psych.
Like, ah,
Yeah,
dang
that
it.
was the name of his victims. I was like, Billy and Miriam Locane. Let's fucking go. They changed the answer for like which street does this. It used to be Nathan Avenue, which is like a really easy one, and I forget the other question. But
How many
and I
people
like that
drowned?
they changed those questions. Oh yeah, how many people were killed in the plague?
Yeah.
I believe less than you'd think. It was like 40 something. But and I like they're bringing up this plague a bit more. That's kind of like deep cut. Like you have to be a weirdo to know about that shit sort of stuff. So I like all this like background trivia they're including in general in different places. But I do not like the direction of the elevator quiz, the trick or treat quiz, because the original is so fucking campy and weird and unhinged, and the voice actor is having the time of his fucking life in that version. And it's played a lot more normal and straight and almost a little boring in this. And like every time they've redone the elevator quiz, because they also redubbed it for the HD collection, they just can't do it as good. The original is just too fun.
Yeah. I like, the other world section's pretty good. You eventually go to the basement again. You run into Maria down there. Pyramid Head does what he do again. She gets got. You elevate her up. Pete, do you have something?
No.
Okay.
I was agreeing. Pyramid Head has one or two moves really, but he's very good at them.
Yeah.
I was one of the parts I was worried about for Bloober Team with regards to the fixed camera angles was that chase scene in the basement with Pyramid Head, because in the original we got the fixed camera angle, so you're running at the camera and you can see Pyramid Head behind you, so you know how close he is. You can see that he's managing to attack Maria a couple times. Probably she can get hurt during this part. She can die during this part. In this version, because you have control over the camera, you're going to be looking where you're going, and Maria is beating you to the elevator also. So like there was parts of this I liked, but I almost feel like they should have just done a fixed camera angle, but like it probably would have like bamboozled players to do that all of a sudden. But it's like, how do you remake that and have it have the same oomph with a non-fixed camera?
Pyramid Head does burst through some walls here and there, right? Like you do get some spookies, I think.
During that part?
It's either he
I
makes
don't know.
stuff collapse, I think, in front of you. Like they do some stuff to slow you down, so that there's a sense of dread. You can't see him, but you can hear him. And they throw some like hurdles and things for you to go around.
I was like running backwards watching him. Like I was like, "Hey, it's him!" Like I'm having like a really fun time with this game because I'm not scared of any of the monsters in it because they're like old friends of mine. So I'm just like, every time I see, a new critter, I'm like, "Ee, yay, it's them! Hi!" Like I'm making noises that people make at kittens doing cute shit, and it's like horrible amalgamations doing fucked up movements. I'm just like, "Yay, my friends!" So like I was doing that whole Pyramid Head section, being like, "Oh, but I want to look at him. Oh, he's coming for me. Here he comes. Haha."
Oh, he's so spooky. He's got his little knife. But yeah, I that sequence is pretty good. She gets stabbed, and Maria dies in front of you again. You go up to the top. You find Laura. She locks James in a room because he yells at her for no good reason.
That was earlier.
Oh, it does. You fight the boss here, right? The
No, you
dude who
fight the
descends
boss
to the ceiling.
earlier.
I mixed it up. That boss is good though.
That was actually when the other world happens. The other
Oh,
world
okay.
transition is when after the flesh lips fight, and then later on, earlier. I'm getting it all mixed up because they've changed certain orders of certain things. So Pyramid Head doesn't like yeet you into the other world, but he does yeet you into a scary place, which is like the padded rooms, basically.
Right.
But yeah, the flesh lips fight was fucking awesome.
It was.
Oh my
It was.
god! Holy shit!
Yeah, Pete. What did you think of that fight?
It was good. Yeah. Again, like I'm not. I excuse me. I meant to replay the original one, but didn't because we had a lot of video game to get to. So this one caught me off guard, and I honestly can't remember if it's in the first one, the original, or the not. But a very good fight. Scary, dangly thing. Looks gross. Moves weird. I mean, what more do you want from a horror game boss?
I mean,
Yeah, in the original, Laura locks you in that room, and there are 2 flesh lips in there hanging from the ceiling. It's also a very small room, way, way, way smaller. It's like 30% the size of the room that you're in, at least in the remake. So you're fighting 2 of them. They have like 2 moves. They're not very good at getting you, and you just kind of wander around staring up and shooting them with shotguns. It's not a good fight. It's never been a good fight. It's dull. And the glow up on this boss fight, oh my god. They took away one of the flesh lips. There's only one in there now, but this guy pulls out all the stops. He has so many moves. He has so many like interactions you can do. You can like shoot him down from the ceiling and have to deal with him on the floor for a little while, which was I was like, holy shit, what the you can't just do that. That's insane.
and the more you
Just
damage
super
it,
thrilling.
like the cage that it's trapped in will start getting broken, and then it becomes almost like spider legs, and it can
Yeah.
operate on the ground and run around at you. You,
hit
Anytime,
you.
anytime you want to inject a little horror to just making things move like spiders, it's just
Yeah.
always a good move.
yeah,
This felt like
sure would be weird if they did that more later, but whatever.
I love it. I love it. But this feels like a correct interpretation of a bad boss fight from Silent Hill Homecoming. The final boss of Homecoming is a fucked up metal spider type gross thing that has like a very long reach and it's really like fucking annoying to deal with. So it feels like they took lessons learned from why that boss fight isn't great and applied it to this and like glowed up the Flesh Lips fight so good. It destroys a wall halfway through so the
Mhm.
arena gets way bigger. I was like losing my mind over this.
Yeah, and you could see it moving around in the tiles above you, like really
Ugh.
clearly. And eventually, when it breaks out enough tiles, you can see it in the shadows of the root of like the ceiling, moving around. It's a good fight. It's a good fight. Save your shotgun ammo for it. It's a good fight.
Oh, so
Um,
sick.
yeah, and then after Maria dies, you take the elevator, you escape, you pursue Laura some more, and you get night in Silent Hill with rain. And we'll leave it there because coming up is the back half of the game. There's way too much to discuss. Yes. Any closing thoughts on the first half of Silent Hill 2 remake, Jess?
Wow. You're doing it. You're nailing it, Bloober team. I was so scared that this was gonna suck so bad. And I've never been happier to be extremely fucking wrong. So please don't blow it in the back half, I guess is my main thought right now. I don't see how they could. They're like really, they have good instincts with this. And like every other change they've made has been like, at worst, like a little bit less than a lateral move. Like just barely, sorry about my mic. Just barely worse than a lateral move. Like with Pyramid Head's introduction, I think that was just like, that one was worse for me, but like not in a way where it's just like it's ruined, game
No.
bad, like throw it all away or anything like that. So I've been like crazy impressed, way more impressed than I could have imagined. So I've never been more happy to be eating crow on this.
Pete, any closing thoughts on remake?
No, I mean, I think I would echo most of the same points. And I don't think any of us really trusted Bloober team going into this, but I think, pleasantly surprised. I would like to see some sort of like wild moves in the second half just to make things interesting. Maybe like Pyramid Head takes off the pyramid, we find out exactly who he is. I don't
No,
expect it, but
they did that in Homecoming, dog.
Oh
did
no.
they? I don't even remember now.
Yeah, there's a bad ending in Homecoming where they've got Alex Shepard tied down to a fucked up looking chair, like an execution chair, and one pyramid head comes from his left and one pyramid head comes from his right, and they each have one half of the pyramid and they ka-chunk it on his head.
That's stupid. All right, do something
So
better
stupid.
than that at least.
So stupid. Is there anything coming up that you're anticipating, like seeing how they do a take on it?
So I've gotten pretty far into the game, so I know how they do some things. I really want to see the fire, the scene with Angela. I want to see how they do
Yeah.
that. I really want to see how they handle the final boss of this game
Yeah.
because they've been pretty ambitious about reimagining stuff that wasn't great in the original.
Yeah,
And
good so far.
I think that fight, the final boss fight, is just very janky in Silent Hill 2, in
Yeah.
some ways. And I'm hoping that that won't be quite as janky. But there's not much else I haven't seen already. So,
Mhm.
um,
I'm
just
looking forward to like I have been really stoked to see the new maps of these levels because I'm so
Mhm.
familiar with these maps. It's been really, really interesting seeing them reinterpreted in those ways that we were talking about, where it like, oh, it kind of like loops you back to where you need to be and feeds you to where you need to go, and there's shortcuts and stuff like that. And like they've done really good jobs with the level design so far. So I'm really interested to see like how big is the hotel? Like, how many floors we talking here? How the part where the hotel starts disintegrating to the real version of the hotel because spoilers, James is imagining it nicer than it is. Like how are they going to handle that? Like it becoming all like decrepit and fucked up, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
little things I'm really looking forward to.
I'm curious to see. I mean, we've talked about James is still terrible in so many ways, but I can sense the effort they put into making him more likable at least at the
Yeah.
beginning. And I'm curious if they try to continue that or if this is going to be like a turn, like, oh, we made him a little bit more likable so we can make him so much worse when we get to the
Mhm.
ending.
Yeah, they're striking a really interesting balance here, and I'm really excited to see if they stick the landing on it, basically.
For sure. We will find out in about 2 weeks whether the Bloober team stuck the landing. Thank you
Mhm.
again, Jess, for joining us on this show.
Absolutely. I love talking about this bullshit.
You can find Jess anywhere at VoidBurger at almost all places, and Skull
Yeah,
Tenders.
most places. Yeah. And watch my silly podcast, please. Thank you.
And reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast at gmail.com. Support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. Thank you, Pete.
Yep, always a pleasure.
And thank you, dear listeners. Till next time, peace.